Okay, we're live, it says.
Gotcha.
So the Twitch is like a video game platform where the youngsters hang out. I know we're not playing video games, but I think that, maybe some people might gain some knowledge from what we're chatting about. Ladies and gentlemen, my
Yeah.
buddy Brian Agnew is with us. How you doing, Brian?
Hey, man. Good. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Brian's a great, one of my favorite human beings, and you've been a great friend for a while now, man. You know what? I don't think I've ever met in person. Isn't that crazy?
No, we haven't. Yeah.
But I consider you a great friend. I mean, we've chatted all the way back from the cannabis stuff with
Yeah.
the canines. That's what really started us to started our relationship.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, man. We just kind of hit it off, and then talk about dogs a lot, and
Like mine.
like mines. That's right. So, and so you've relocated. You're now where you at now, Brian?
Salt Lake City now.
What brought you to Salt Lake?
Almost a year. I had my ranch for a while out about 90 minutes outside of LA. And it was like 5 acres. It was a little isolated, although it was beautiful. So I sold it and I moved back down into El Segundo, which is kind of near the LA airport.
Right.
And so it was like two extremes, So now I was crowded in the city, and for years I climbed for years. I backpacked and hiked as a kid. I grew up in a little town called Hemet in Southern California, and went up to Idlewild, and I climbed all through Yosemite, and I just wasn't doing that anymore, and I wasn't recharging. So when I worked in the film industry, you would be down, you do a job and then you're not working. So we'd go out and climb for 4 or 5 days and just, and you just recharge and get out into the wilderness. And I realized that was a big part of what I was missing. And to do anything in LA is not an easy task. So I have a friend out here, a good friend I've known for over 16 years, who's a trainer, and she kept sending me photos of the hikes her and her husband were going on, the waterfalls. And I said, "How far is that from your house?" She goes, 15 minutes. And I'm like, all right.
I'm so there.
So I said, "I'll come out and visit you." And I decided, no, I'm moving. So she was so busy that it really helped that she, was referring clients to me right out of the gate. And so now things are picking up, and I'm working with Sherry Boyer. So we're going to kind of dig in a little deeper, what I can do just to get, more business. I texted her the other day and I said, I really love teaching. And I really love teaching young trainers, and not even young trainers. I've had trainers,
new trainers
but I've had a mentor with me that have been training for quite a few years, a long time, just looking for different input, and I think that's always been my thing, is like I always keep trying to evolve and not just stay locked into like, well, this is what I do. This is what I've been doing for, whatever, 17, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
I get bored. And I always look at, okay, well, this isn't working for this dog. So for me, I think it's a big passion of mine to mentor and do workshops, as well as work with clients and help them, and the betterment of their relationship with their dog. But so that's kind of what Sherry and I were talking about, as far as building my business. But now word of mouth is starting to pick up, and I've had a fair amount of clients since I've been. I mean, I've had board and trains from the moment I got here; they were already booked. So it was a pretty easy move, and I'm extremely grateful to my friend Kendra.
But you want to make that transition of not necessarily doing the B&Ts. Do you see yourself always doing those?
Oh yeah, I like them.
Okay.
This place I fell upon, I'm renting it right now, is probably the best setup I've ever had. It's got like a single car garage at the back of the property that they moved from across. So they told me this whole story. They tore it down from over there, rebuilt it, and lady had a florist shop in there, so it's like all plumbed with stainless steel sink and AC and hot water heater, and it's a perfect dog room in the yard. The lot here's really big, and I have a park up the street, and there's all kinds of stuff we can go do. Take the dogs, hiking, go into all these different, Home Depot and Chills, and there's a huge dog community out here. We do pack walks every Sunday. There's a group called Utah Pack Walks, and they do pack walks all throughout Utah. It's like a little organization.
Cool.
They're either led by trainers or just by dog owners. So it's been pretty awesome,
Cool. And then how long have you been there? I can't remember.
Almost a year. July.
Okay.
Yeah.
So starting to get those roots established, but you also have people visiting you from all over the country, and that's actually what I'm going to start doing as well, is inviting trainers from all over the country, all over the world, if they want to come stay with me, see what I do, bring their dogs. And do you want to talk about that for a little bit? What started you doing that, and what are the benefits? What are the downfalls?
I don't know what really started, how I got started in the mentoring thing. I think, probably somebody asking, like people do, I think
Yeah.
way back before I was even in training, when I talked to some of the, older trainers that, it used to be, apprenticeships where people come and pick up poop and, whatever. But, and they kind of learn that way. But, I think it's just somebody wanted to come learn, and eventually I started, charging, and I think it's I mean I have a lot of trainers whose businesses have blossomed after they mentored with me, because it's just, I'm not a business person. That's why I get in touch with somebody like Sherry Boyer, to help me with that marketing side, because that's just not my thing. But I think turning out a good product is key, in my opinion. And my business is always built on word of mouth. So I think that by working with these trainers and showing them other ways to do stuff with a dog, and or tweaking what they're doing or whatever it is, that just gives them a broader kind of knowledge base, versus just staying kind of, ideologies in anything, is limiting, and training is no different. If you're going to be all positive, that's fine, but you're limiting yourself, and you limit the progress that the dog can make.
I call them corridors. You're placing yourself in a corridor perception where you're limited, like you said, and I started out as like purely positive myself, but then I saw the competing motivators in that dog's mind, and I saw the dogs doing stuff that they should not be doing in theory, right? And I'm like, wait a second, something's not correlating here. Something's incongruent, because what I was expecting and what I was taught was going to happen isn't happening. And then you start to learn more and more, and the repetition of purely positive is almost unattainable when you start to look at the lifestyle and how long it takes, and the expectations of our clientele. And so then I started to look at dogs and I started to look for trainers based on their dogs, right?
Yeah.
Because I want the outcome, I want the truth, I want the amazing relationship that can be had, is isn't all sunshine and rainbows. I found out sometimes there is a messy middle when dealing with any behavior.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's that learning curve that we have to go through as individuals and as professionals, right?
Oh yeah, big. I mean, I went through, a few iterations. I tried like positive stuff, and then worked with some other trainer, at a daycare place, and then just kept kind of moving along. And then the last iteration has been the one that has, I think, been the best, as far as, going into drive theory, which drive theory stuff has been around. Wendy Volhard and Jack Volhard brought that over in the 70s from Germany.
Wow. Drive theory?
Yeah.
I mean, just what motivation, right? Motivation, what motivates. We have
like dogs are born with these 3 instinctual drives.
Thank you, buddy.
And so you have pack drive, prey drive, and defense drive. And pack drive is kind of, there's, when you're talking dog on dog, like pack drive can be seen in grooming, procreation. Um, that's part of pack drive. Prey drive,
banter, play,
yeah,
tonation,
play
like,
is like a mix. Well,
okay,
be a mix of all three drives.
right,
So you'll see prey, one dog chasing the other one, right?
right,
So
mock,
then a dog corrects another dog. That's a dog being pushed in what we call defense fight behavior. If a dog is too strong on a dog and that dog goes into flight, that dog is in defense flight behavior. And then when they all chill and just lay down and like lick each other's faces, now they've switched in the pack drive, or
cool.
grooming is part of pack drive. So when, I really looked at that, it made a lot of sense to me. And more importantly, it made sense to the client, you know. And when you explain it to the client in a brief, because you're not going to explain in depth like you wouldn't explain operative conditioning to a client. They don't care about
Right,
it.
right.
They just want their dog to be better. So part of that is, you explain it to a client and you're like, they're the light bulb goes off. And they go, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, a lot of times too, it's analogies and putting it in a way that they get. How do you explain it, or do you see? I mean, how do you explain it where they get it? How do you check in with them? Are you asking? Are you picking up? Because I always do. I'm like, am I making sense? And I'll probably do that a bunch of times in this conversation.
I don't really explain a lot to the client. I show them. I show it through their dog. So like a big thing that I do when a client comes after the first week the dog's been with me, I call it recalibrating the dog. So they come into the yard, they're at the far end of the yard. I bring their dog out of the dog room, which is on the other side of the yard, and the dog's on a long line. I tell them just stand there and don't say anything. Most of the dogs come out and start barking at their owners. And so all I'm asking this dog to do, and this is a really good tip because I'll get students, mentors that have called me after they've taken their dog home from board and train. They go, "Oh, it was a total shit show," and
yeah, I've
you're
had
like,
those.
that is like the most challenging time you're going to have with a dog is when the owners are back in the picture. It doesn't matter how much you take them out, and
it's like everything just went away, man.
yeah,
Everything that we just worked with, and
and so what I'll do is let the dog, and it's a good example. So I say, okay, now you see this dog's barking at you because it's unaware of who you are, because a lot of clients talk to their dogs before they allow the dog just to be a dog, right?
right.
And so the dog only knows the owner through verbal first, because that's what they do when they come in. This is very common. We want the dog to drive on the scent. We want the dog to go into prey drive, right? We want the dog to
be a dog,
triggered by sight, scent, sound, and movement.
That's what the dog should be using first and foremost, but being a dog by itself, right?
What the dog is, a lot of these dogs do, they're looking visually at something and then they're reacting to it. So what I'll do in that case,
teach them to do that.
The dog back to me, and I'll tell the people as I'm doing this, I said, so when people come into your house and your dog's being this way, here's the protocol we're going to do. We're going to recall it away. We're going to send it to place. So I just keep doing this, and all of a sudden the dog will start to go air scent, and you'll see it, and then it picks up the owner's scent, and then you see the whole behavior switches to an overexcited, over anxious dog. That tells you where that relationship is with that dog and that person. And so what you do again is you start recalling a dog back to you or me, which we're bringing the dog back in the pack drive. You won't have behavior issues in pack drive, right? You're only going to have your behavior issues in prey drive or a dog in defense. But when you bring a dog in pack drive, everything becomes neutral, And so what happens is the dog starts to go, I don't want to go. I'm letting the dog go out. I'm letting it go to the owners, but it's not hitting the owner. It's not getting there. I just keep calling it back. And so what I'm doing,
you have a long line too on it too.
On a long line. So what I'm doing is letting the dog experience going there in an anxious state, and then experience coming back to me. Within a week, the dog has a calm it's been decompressed. So it sees me as a calm source of direction.
Do you have any videos by chance?
starts going out towards the owner, and it turns around and comes back to me without any intervention. And the dog will just sit there and look at me. And it's like, because you're tapping into the emotional component of the dog, you're saying you can go out there and feel that way. And let me show you what it's like. You're A, B, and the dog back and forth. It's like a juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Right. And so then the dog gets into the owner and it jumps. And then we do this whole cycling of, okay, tell them to leave it, tell them to sit, put your hand on them. So now we're recalibrating like through sight, we're recalibrating through the sound, we're recalibrating through the touch of the owner, what that does to the dog. And then after about 10 minutes, I just have him go, okay, he's calm. Just take him back and forth in the yard, tell him, let's go. Once the dog dials in, then you can say, okay, send him to place. But when you try and get this dog to execute everything, the first time it reunites with its owner, that's where it just falls apart,
Yeah, here's I found the over-aroused, excited, or overstimulated dog. Let's watch this because this is your video here. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's about a 20-minute video.
Well, we'll just kind of go through some of the when you work in the dogs. You're talking here, so we'll go through when you're actually doing some long line work, or if that is.
This may have been.
Here's some dog stuff right here. Yeah, so you can see that high arousal.
Yeah.
We gotta, and so you're just kind of walking, but notice that and we're here. I don't have the sound on here.
Bring him down. Let's go.
So you're trying to bring him down. And you said, let's go. And you kind of bring him back, working through the situation.
So it's the same thing. I'm not asking him to stay with me. I'm letting him go out, be aroused, and bring him back in. Go out. See how Hazel is not, that dog, white dog is not too keen on him. Her tail's really high up.
Right. Kind of nervous about his presence. Even she's a little surprised, but she's interested.
The more I get him calmed down, and the more he's not so fixated on him.
You say the more I get him calmed down, the more he's not so fixated.
Let's go.
Yeah, but look at the other dog's body language.
Totally.
Calming down.
Yes.
They're more inclined to stay around. See, Hoku's engaging the play.
Yep. Little banter, little play, which is that prey and defensive.
Right there, when he starts ramping up and putting his paw on her back, the next thing's going to be he's going to mount her.
So paw on the back is when you recalled him. So you didn't want him to mount her or anything. You're always keeping him mounted.
Correction. It's more direction here.
That's right. No correction, direction. Listen to that, folks. No correction, direction.
Now here's Edie. That's my old working girl. She was like the best. Look at her.
Look at her. What a good.
She was probably 14 at that time.
How about that?
She died around 16.
I got an 18-year-old right over here on the couch.
And Edie is just a very classic, what we call high defense, confident pit bull.
Look at that.
Her tail, neutral, moving, but neutral.
That's right.
The other dog, very neutral in the tail. That pit bull, Appa, look at his still though. He's like
still a little bit too aroused. But I see a calm when he comes next to your side just now.
Yeah.
So watch this. So I want to illustrate that really quick. So we watch him as he comes to the side of Brian here, you guys. So head up, tail up, still pretty aroused. As Brian comes towards the camera, watch the dog as he hits his side. Right there.
Yeah. So it's starting to slow down.
Starting to slow down. Starting to relax.
Back in the pack drive, but
that's right.
He was a beautiful dog.
Yeah, he is. But this is an example of what you're talking about. Is that
very similar? Yeah, I would do this. This is my ranch. So what I do with the clients is I would put them in that yard on that far end, and I'd bring the dogs in from the other side. I do this recalibration just as I was explaining to you.
I love it, dude. I want to do it.
You can do that. That works really well. Like, because I didn't have a lot of access to dogs up there. Like, I couldn't go to a park. So when I had reactive dogs come in, I had to be very calculated on how I used my dogs, other board and trained dogs to expose that reactive dog to. So what I learned is by doing that, I would get good recall on the dog. I would get let's go. I would teach the dog like a heel. And I would teach it to leave it. And I'd feel all that outside of away from the dogs. And then now when I want to put a dog in front of them, I would drop a dog in that yard and I'd walk out into that field, I was on 5 acres. And then I'd let the dog start heading towards my yard and I would watch his cues when he would see a dog. And so the dog could start whining when it saw a dog. The minute I heard anything or saw any shift in the behavior, and it was on a long line, so he's 15 feet out, I'd recall him back. and I'd tamp everything down. So then we'd find the next threshold where the dog would display that subtle behavior, whether it's stalking or whining. That's the first indicator that the dog feels uncertain about a dog. In fact, it wasn't addressed. So then if it's not addressed, then the pressure builds, and then the dogs start to lunge. And that's how reactivity tends to build. So what I do this at a lowest level and saying, oh, you feel that way about the dog? Come back here. And they come back to me and their brain settles, and then we move forward. I let the dog move forward on its own to find the next threshold. And a lot of dogs, I could do that for 10 minutes and I could be right up on the fence line, walking them back and forth. My dogs were calm. So then to up the ante, then I would throw maybe a more excited board and trained dog out there, and I do the exercise again. So that's how I had to work reactive dogs up there, because I didn't have dogs like in a park to work them off of.
Yeah, you're a little limited.
Yeah, so you had to learn to kind of,
Joe says, looking forward to watching this back later. Make sure to share this, Joe. Everybody share this. Type in the comments where you're watching this from in the world. You were saying earlier, Brian, about and what? 1 second. Joe is coming on next week, and Joe is an Army Ranger.
Oh,
and
cool.
So we're going to be talking about Ranger School, and Joe is actually a new trainer. So I would highly recommend you going and mentoring with Brian, Joe.
Thank you for your service, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. And so, yeah, he's a great guy and a great dad. Look forward to speaking with him. And I have a lot of great interviews lined up. Looks like we got a Brit across the pond.
Uh-oh.
Liam, my man. And yeah, watching Ontario, Canada. But what I was going to say earlier too was, and I wrote this down, is because you were saying the dogs are coming in using their eyes, right? And one of the exercises that I do that I actually learned from Bart Bellin with the man trailing stuff is you force that dog to use their nose, because that's how they're going to see. And when you go and we have my dear friend Teresa watching from Bentonville, Arkansas. Teresa, do you know Teresa at all, Brian?
No.
Oh man, you guys need to know each other. Great people. But when I'll tell people to hi. Oh, Billy. Oh, Billy is one of my newest Patreon supporters. Billy, thank you. And yeah, and Brian is actually going to be our first guest. So you guys, if you join my Patreon club or group, whatever that's called, subscribe. $20 level, you are going to join us for an interactive Zoom call, 2-hour long, with a professional every month. And so I think it's going to be well worth the money. And I'm going to actually have some more surprises that I'm going to provide for my Patreon supporters. So I'm working on becoming a content creator full time, and I need your help doing that. So if you guys would consider supporting me, I'll put down the link to Patreon in the comments below a little bit later in the conversation. But Billy, thank you for joining, and look forward to having you join us on the Zoom call as well. And Teresa is one of our Patreons, so she'll be on the Zoom call as well. So, but what I do is I have my people hide, and then I have the dog go find them, and they want to help that freaking dog, man. They're like, hey, and knock that shit off.
Yeah.
And you basically want to be quiet, let that dog run by you 4 times, because on the 5th time, maybe they might use that nose, and they're going to find you as soon as they tap into that talent, Yeah.
Well, that's just a very common thing. That's why I do that recalibration.
Well, I think we teach them. That's what I say. Like, we teach them to use their eyes as human beings, because that's what we do. And so I don't think
that's how we're developed. How do we develop, right? As humans, why do they play music for babies in utero?
Right.
Because it's the hearing first.
Oh, it is a hearing. Okay. So that would make sense, that the noise to help the dog out.
Right. So dogs are born theoretically, and I can't remember his name. It's a book. I don't read a lot of books, but maybe I'll remember. But he had a really great thing about how touch was actually the most critical since when puppies are born. And when you really stop and think about it, it is to find the warmth of the mother, the siblings. And so the mother moves them around with touch. So it was very to me, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then the nose is what is primary. 60% of the brain's controlled by the nose, right? So they develop that in that sense, nose, eyes, and then the ears are developed. For humans, we develop hearing, then our eyes, and scent is the last thing. We don't go up to people and go, you smell lovely. That's not how we greet people, right? We greet people, we visually see them.
You're like, man, you smell good.
Talk to them, and then you go, you smell delicious. So
I could just eat you up.
yeah, but touch was like that. That was like a really eye-opening thing to me, because when you look at what you do with dogs, there is a lot of touch with any equipment that you're using. Pressure, slip, prong, e-collars, electronic touch. Even if you stick a harness on the dog.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I put my hands on the dogs a lot. Like my students sometimes say, you give the dog a lot of affection. I'm like, I'm giving a dog something that has meaning to it. Something that is, so petting the dog here in the chest, there's pressure points there that are calming for the dog. So you see me do that a lot with the dogs, especially the ones that are more anxious. And then I start running my hand down their spine and massaging that. So
right up here, we have the
right
point, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then right back here, they cannot defend against, right?
Right.
And so by touching this area, you're saying, I'm a good dude. You can trust me.
Right. So I think that's a really kind of a critical thing that people don't think about, is like
belly too. When the belly's open, right? This is Pecan. Look at her.
Look at her eyes.
As you can tell, she's absolutely is terrified of me.
Abusive, man.
I'm totally abusing her. I'm dominating my dog. But do you know what I love? What you said, dude, is direction, not correction, because sometimes people just come down on these dogs with a hammer, and I'm just like, no. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like it's our need.
Yeah. I think it's if I tell my mentor students a lot too, and I said, if I gave you a long line and said, here, start working the dog, and all I did is come out and criticize what you're doing and correcting you like in an abusive way, you're probably not going to stay around long.
I'd be like, fuck you, dude. Like, this guy, screw this guy over here.
Right. So I think the thing with the dogs is I want to build a connection through direction initially. And then later down the road, when you throw that correction in there, it's going to have a little more meaning for the dog. And I like to either correct them and send them right away into what I want them to do. So instead of just correcting the dog and letting it hang, it's like, okay, that was a mistake, but here's what I want you to do.
That's right.
They'll avoid that correction. And it's a whole different thing of correction and punishment too. They're two different things.
Right. And then we have correction versus adversary or adversarial correction, and then but yeah, and don't be thinking that I won't correct a dog or Brian won't correct a dog, and there's some behavior that needs to be met head on. If there's a dog going after another dog, or if there's a dog coming after me or you, then that's going to be a totally different protocol than, trying to build the trust. Some things I tell them sometimes I need to have a come to Jesus, or, just that behavior needs to be addressed, that's not a good idea, and I'm not anybody to mess with. And, but that's where the tools come in. And I think that's where it is very valuable to work with your mentors, because I think people take on.
I love when my mentors go home, like Gina, we still stay in touch, and she can always call me, or a lot of times I call them because they think I'm too busy, and I was calling them like, oh, you're calling me. I was like, no, I don't. I hate texting. The texting's great for like short little bursts.
Yeah.
Or emailing is great, but I need to be in front of the dogs, and I also need to be on the phone. And to me, that's part of what a mentor is. They're there for you. They're not going to just give you like 1 or 2 sentence answers. It's like, no, I want to know there's something deeper about this. So I get on the phone. Let's knock it out, hash through it.
Absolutely. And same thing too, if there's something lost in translation or in a little bit of communication, like I'm doing Zoom sessions, and I love my Zoom sessions with professionals, so dog trainers that already have a subset of knowledge. It's a little bit more difficult with people that are green, but when they send me videos, and if you're going to do Zoom sessions with me, I charge $100 an hour, and send me videos, send me pictures, everything that we can go through And just like when we watched Brian's video just now, how we can pinpoint when that dog started to, you know, chill out a little bit by his side, we can really, really illustrate what I'm talking about. But even then, there's stuff lost in translation.
Yeah. And
It's
what
just,
I would recommend, I'm going to go and use the restroom real quick, but I recommend if you're sending in video, shoot it horizontal.
yes.
No, I mean, Instagram has ruined the 16:9. I have to shoot vertical. It drives me nuts, but it's part of the process. But if something merits, I know when I'm shooting something, when I'm working with a dog, I know how to work the frame for vertical. But if it's too big of an issue, it's going to go into horizontal landscape mode. But if you're
Yeah.
sending video in the bill to analyze, always shoot it horizontal because we want to see everything that's going on in the environment.
Well, and do you know what? Scan the environment for me too, because remember,
Yeah,
we're looking through a lens. Go ahead and use the restroom, Brian, and I'll go solo here for a little bit. Let
Okay.
you do your thing. But yeah, if you guys are interested, get a hold of me and we can do some Zoom sessions. And I've had some great results with the people that I've worked with previously, and I've actually have some people in the audience here that I've worked with as well. But it's something that before COVID and before this pandemic, I would have never ever thought that the Zoom would be as successful as they are. But it kind of forced us to innovate, and I'm having a good time with it, man. So, and there's a lot of things that you can do with the Zoom. You can share your screen, send links. If you guys send me videos, then I can actually go through, and I have one of the mouses that I can actually roll through very slowly the behavior, and so that we can get through. And you know, I'm looking forward to having some trained up dogs online, exclusively online. And you know, it's a beauty of the internet. So looks like Brian's back. We're good. Here whoops, add to stream. There we go. There you go.
Cool. So anyways, that's
recalibrating the dog is the first thing that you do when the people get there. So, and then what do you just kind of see where things unfold organically, or what's the next?
I just, well, you know, the first thing the dog knows really well is to follow, let's go, recall, place.
Right.
Kind of my.
And if a dog follows you, a dog trusts you.
Yeah, but that's why when the owners come in, I have the dog do the simplest thing, is to follow.
Okay.
Right. And so they're on an e-collar. So basically I have the remote and I just say, tell them, let's go. When they say, let's go, I bump the collar. If the dogs start, and they're dragging a line a lot of times. So if the dog wants to deviate, they can actually just pick the line up. Because the thing is, you have to stay far away because the dog will default to me, because for the first week, it knows when it feels that e-collar bump, the default is to move to the handler. So sometimes it'll break off from the owner if I'm too close and come to me. So that's why the line's on, to give the dog direction and clarity to go, oh, you got to follow that handler. And if the dog's doing well, then it's like, okay, recall the dog back. And then dog's like settling in. You can see everything shift in the dog where it starts to go, oh, this feels different. This feels different. I'm calm around you. You're giving me direction.
I never knew.
And then all of a sudden I said, well, walk it over to that place board. When you're about a foot away, tell the dog to go on place. I never know how the dog's going to perform, but it blows me away every time when I do that recalibration thing. I've had dogs, like the owner put their hand on the dog and the dog's just doing this. It's like, they're repulsed, because the association to that person is one of like high levels of anxiety, you know, because when people are petting their dogs, when the dogs, you know, are over adrenalized, and then you come in and you start petting the dog, then what do you think you represent to the dog? Is adrenaline, right?
Doubts, fears, anxieties, you know.
Yeah, so that's why. And then you'll see the dog, like one dog was doing that, going, I don't know if I want you, I don't know if this, and all of a sudden you see the dog just start to like, I go, just keep your hand there, and the dog would like soften, and then look up at the owner. I say, okay, now move your hand. So a lot of times you just put your hand on the chest of the dog and let them just soak on that, and then you can start adding the movement. If the dog gets excited and jumps, then you have to tell them to leave it, put them back into a sit, put your hand back on the dog again. So that's what I mean. You got to recalibrate, because the dog's association to the owner is usually not one of calm.
That's right.
One of excitement.
Well, and I don't know where in human history we got it in our minds that the manic dog is a happy dog. Like they get them so wound up, and I'm like, you guys, this is freaking lunacy.
Well, that's why it's good when you do that, because the owners can see their dog. I don't have to explain it. I can explain what's going on.
Not only see it, but I know they can feel it, man.
But when the owners, like, all of a sudden I say, this is what you represent, right? And it's not being a judgmental thing. That's the last thing you want to do, is be judgmental to these people, because they want this.
Trying to help.
Right. And so, but I said, but let's do this exercise. And then when they see that, when they put their hands on the dog and now that this dog shifts to a calm state, I said, this is what you represent now. Right. And they're like, oh, I love this, And so it's like, yes, you can give your dog affection. Yes, you can pet your dog. You can talk to your dog, but we have to understand that if you pet your dog, what does it trigger at this moment? It triggers excitement. Then we have to ask to come in and give the dog like a leave it. So now we have to correct that behavior, but right away we give the dog direction back to a sit.
Right.
Then you put your hands. So it's like this affection, right? Correction, direction, affection. And a lot of times it takes about
boundaries. Now let me show you what I mean.
Right.
Okay, and now you're getting a little bit too much. Boundaries.
Right.
Knock it off. Let me show you what I mean. Right. In other words. And the other thing too is like that fast pet, like, and I'm like,
that's what you have to teach them.
Calm that down, man. Like touch.
That's why I always say, just put your hand here and hold it first. Right. Because the initial response when they want to pet their dogs is to be fast. So fast hands is going to make a fast dog.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why you start with just pressure in that space, and then you build from there. But I've seen a lot of dogs, after you do that for 3 cycles, they kind of go, I'm cool, and they walk away. And they go out in the yard and just stir a dog. And the owners are standing there like going, well, he doesn't care about me. I go, oh no, he really cares about you a lot. Actually. He cares so much about you, he's actually going out and being a dog.
Yeah, he's being vulnerable. He's being just like cool,
I
man.
do that every time they come back. Every time I'll do the same process, and then eventually I'll just let the dog out off the lead, and I'll just work it off the line and recall it back in. But they acclimate really quick back to the owner,
Well, and it's interesting that they say they don't care about me, because of the way that we perceive this relationship and the way it's supposed to be, right?
Right.
And when the dog is just being like that, sharing the space and just being a dog is a compliment, And I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 or 7 dogs in this room right here.
Right.
Right. And they're all just chilling, doing their own thing. But I think just like Dr. Robbie Iyer, who I was speaking to, and he's going to be coming on again next week. But we were talking about the investment into this relationship and the payoff that we receive. And that's why dogs are so popular, is because the love that they give us, based on just minimal what we need to do. And I think that in human world is absolutely why we have dogs so popular. But at the same token, I think that expectation of this animal is misplaced and unbalanced in a lot of ways to the human side, where the benefit is solely with the human. And that's why I've traded my life to work with these dogs as an advocate for the animal, to ensure that they're also getting the benefit out of the relationship. And that's exactly what I see you doing as well.
Yeah, I think that's, we all to like try and, tell an owner you can't pet your dog because you make it too excited, it's not going to go well. Right. So that's where you have to teach the owner, this is what we do to create calmness in your dog. Excitement's easy to create.
Totally.
It's a no-brainer. So that's my focus when dogs come in, is like, look, I'm going to show you what it's like to be calm, and then when you put something in front of the dog that adrenalizes it, like the owner, and then you say, okay, come away from that. And how do you feel with me? And then you can go back out there, and then I'm going to call you back here. And the dog starts to go, no, I like it here, because being that way is not normal.
I have to remind people
this is making a choice on its own based on emotionally, how does it feel with me versus them? But the the training won't stick if you don't teach the owner, this is how you represent this, right? This is what you represent. This is how you represent what I represent to your dog. Now, they can take that and run with it. I think there's people are willing to live with a certain amount of bad behavior.
Oh, dude, I've seen people driving down the road with a dog literally barking right in their ear.
Yeah,
I'm like, what the hell?
I'm a board and train. I've sent dogs home, and I'm like, this dog is a really challenging dog. But next thing you know, they're referring my name out to people, and I'm like, and then I get touches.
Something must have worked.
They're like, oh, he's doing great. We're still struggling with this, but man, he's so much calmer. That's like probably the biggest compliment.
Totally, dude. Calm, confident dogs. That's what I tell people. I'm all about calm, confident dogs.
They're not going to win ribbons for their obedience. They're not snappy. They lay down and they're relaxed. They sit and they're relaxed. They go to their place. They relax. That's what I teach them.
Yeah.
Because again, you can create the excitement. If you want to do rally with your dog, great. Create a calm dog first. Create an off switch. If you're going to do anything that's going to drive the adrenaline up, show the dog what being off is like first. Then that's why I do this stuff called pulse training when I have a lot of dogs here, and they're pretty dialed in with recall in place and they can be off leash. I'll let them out, they play, and they start to elevate to a certain level. I'll recall them, put them all on place, let them all down regulate, let that adrenaline come all the way down until they're just chill, and they're spending a lot of time in that chill space. And I'm like, all right, and I quietly just go, let's go, and I just let them come back off, and they meander around, and they start going up and playing and playing. And if it starts to ramp up, we'll just bring them in. And so you're just pulsing them in and out of stimulation, letting them overstimulate, and then bringing them all the way back down. So the dog starts to feel, I'm getting a little bit, and they self-regulate over time if you keep doing that. And some dogs just break off and go get on a play, so let's go lay down. But you have to create that juxtaposition to say, I had a dog when I was at my ranch that the minute he came out of the house, he was like maximum overdrive. He had insane prey drive, on ball, reactive to dogs. He didn't see a dog for 10 days at my ranch, except for the ones he passed by in the crate. And all I had to do, he knew prey drive for him was in the house. It was, like if it's a ladder, the bottom 2 rungs, maybe that's where he was in the house. The minute the door opened, he was off the charts.
Okay.
And so you had to get control, and he's very insecure. And that's the hardest dogs, in my opinion, are the insecure, or what we call low defense, high prey driven dogs, because they're always loaded forward with adrenaline. For prey, adrenaline is used to move forward. For flight, adrenaline is used to move to run, for safety. So now when you have an insecure dog who's front loaded and then something pops out, they don't give you a lot of indicators of how they feel about that. They just ignite, right? The fuse is short. So you have to get control of
reactive. They're reactive instead of reasoning.
Right. And that's because this fuse is short. So when you do these, so this dog knew nothing about prey drive in the middle. He knew here and off the chart. So what I did in my yard is I just no tennis ball anymore, except for when I wanted to overdrive him briefly, but built place work and got him to understand going on there and relax. And then we would kick him up with bring out food, because food's going to trigger the prey drive. Yes. So that he would get excited and he'd break place, and we put him back on until he calmed down. Then eventually I'd bring out the ball and ignite him as high as he would go, and then put him on place. One time he walked to the gate and wanted out of the yard because he could feel his adrenaline starting to rise, and he wanted to go back in his kennel.
Pulse to self-regulate.
Right. So he was like, it's like an addict, I quit drinking years ago, and I didn't go down to the bar and have lunch after I stopped drinking. I mean, I just decided I'm going to quit.
And what do we do with this behavior? We call it rehabilitation. Just like when we go to an addict, we go to rehabilitation, and we're rehabilitating a certain behavior. And if we come out of that with the same lifestyle that we went into there with, guess what? We're going to be relapsing before we know it.
And that's the thing, though. That's what you have to explain to clients, and that's why you have to teach them. Here's how you communicate to your dog. Here's how you pet your dog. Just little tweaks.
And let your dog show you that I'm correct. Let your dog be the expert here. That's what I tell people, and they laugh at it, but I'm true, man. I mean, that's what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like they're going to tell you if I'm full of crap or not. And the one thing that I have to really, really remind my clients of that a lot of times really surprises them. I'm like, this is stress, you guys. This isn't fun for this dog running. This is this dog stressing out. And when we look at cortisol and we look at adrenaline and we look at adrenal, the it's damaging to muscle tissue. It's damaging to brain tissue. It's not good to be under stress. It's not good to be under the influence of these fight or flight chemicals, and that's why it's so important to get these dogs. And that's why notice that when a dog, you start doing these exercises, Brian, that they actually prefer you, because the other side of this is not.
Yeah,
man.
and that's exactly what you're doing with that dog. You're saying, here's this side of the coin, here's the other side. Where do you want to be? When they start seeing their dog move back to me with no pressure on the line, no bump on the e-collar, and then that's the point where I say, this is what I want you to represent to your dog, right? And then their light bulb goes off, and they're like, yeah, I want to represent that to my dog. You can still do the other things.
Totally. You could still get crazy and manic. But
I think on the level of stress, I think a lot of the behaviors when these dogs come in is that they are overstressed, right? And you make shitty choices when you're adrenalized, unless you've trained with the SEALs or who was the gentleman that popped on who was in the Rangers?
Joe Hodge.
Joe's gone under all these exercises before they even put him in a real.
But a lot of those people are dropped from that program, man.
Right.
Most of the people I would dare venture.
Any dog that's doing like IPO and stuff, those dogs are working under adrenalized states, and they have to work them a lot to get them to execute, and look at hunting dogs, like a true, dogs that are going out and doing retrieving competitions and stuff. Those dogs are they're like as adrenalized as a Malinois in some regards, because their prey drive is extremely high. That's what you want in a good hunting dog, is high prey, low to medium pack, because you don't want that dog going, it's too cold, I want to sit in the blind with you, I don't want to go get the duck. No. You want low pack drive dog. And you want a high defense pack drive or high defense dog, really confident, and that's the thing. But, those labs, they can't make a peep when they're in competition. And they're like, they want to do that, but they have to be very disciplined. If they make a little sound, they get booted, or whine or anything. So, but we're talking pet dogs here.
Yeah, well, I mean, even if you look at the lab out hunting, and I mean, just to go on the working dog side, and if they start whining, then that can jeopardize that hunt as well, right? And
pissing off your buddies you're hunting with, is your dog scaring everything out of the brush.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Or it's breaking too soon, on the flush or the retrieve. It's like, dude, get control of your dog.
Yeah, you're messing it up for everybody, man.
No, but those dogs have been worked time and time again to be functional in that.
Well, I guess my point is for good reason, because there's so many repercussions if this dog doesn't know, and this dog isn't field tried and true, then it's just like look at athletes and human beings, right? Like, they're adrenalized, they're in high stress environments, that's what they do for a living, they absolutely love it, they're passionate about it, but they also have where we take and we swap players out because they can't, they need breaks, they need time, and I mean, it's not just it's good to do that, but they also we don't see all the practice, man. We see an hour of what they do and they perform.
Yeah.
But we don't see all of that went into that performance, and then the afterwards, the recoup and everything. And so we need to take that into consideration when we're looking at working dogs as well. That when we see that performance, we don't see all the years of practice that went into this dog, and the proofing and all that, and how easy it is, especially with these service dogs out there. And if you or somebody that is faking a service dog, man, I mean, a service dog can be ruined pretty quickly by being attacked by a dog that isn't proof for that job. And so there's a good reason why we have these rules. There's good reason why we have standards, but that's another that's not necessarily what Brian does. Like, he works with the rehabilitation, but there are trainers just like Brian hires Sherry to help him with stuff that he doesn't know. Just like I'm going to be bringing on trainers that do that precisely. There are people that are niched out in what they do, and they're great at doing it. But it takes us and the kind of being humble to realize, hey, I don't know this. I need help.
Yeah.
Right. And
And
so,
I wanted to teach a dog scent work, just the basic scent stuff, because the dog he wasn't in the retrieving, it was a Robbie. And we needed to find an activity to kind of fulfill that prey drive of the dog. So I think Wendy Bullhard happened to be out when I had that dog, and they used to do a lot of that. And my friend Robert Cabral knows a lot of that. So, I'd call him and talk to him. It's like, this is what I want to do. And he was like, oh, okay. Kind of gave me the basics on how to, lay a track, and and it was a great little exercise to do with that dog, and the owners could do the same thing with them.
Did you do the PVC pipe where you put a kibble in?
No, we just did track. So you just put the dog in a place, and I was at my ranch, so I had big dirt areas out there, and you just shovel the earth, and you put treats in there.
Ground disturbance,
right? And then you separate the food, and then you make a turn, and however you want to reward the dog at the end of the track.
In NAPO Post School, that was one of the things that they did, man, was they would get out there and they would kick the ground. Yeah. And they were like, who's a volunteer? And I'm like, and they're like, sniff that.
Right.
Now sniff that. And I tell you guys, like, go out there, kick the ground. You're going to feel like an idiot, but I want you to sniff the ground that isn't disturbed. And then I want you to sniff the ground that you've just kicked.
Yeah.
And note, and even if it's gravel, if it's dirt, if it's grass, if it's whatever it is, just take the note of that, because it blew my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, this is exactly what this dog is picking up on. And then when you watch the dog with tracking, you will actually watch their nose go from footprint to footprint to footprint to footprint, because they're sniffing that ground disturbancy, like Brian's talking about.
Yeah, you'd see them kind of come out of the track. Come out of the track, and then they would, move back into it.
Right.
But it's cool to watch them do it.
It's like divine, man. That's what the dogs have. And I love that stuff. The scent work, I geek out on that stuff, because you just watch the dog with this tool. I mean, we have 5 million scent cells. The dog have 120 to some of them have up towards of 200 million scent cells, so, and that's like a handkerchief versus a postage stamp. We have a postage stamp where they have a handkerchief, right? And so just to give you
that's what they call a scent cone, right? So like when I'm doing hang on a second, I have somebody asking me if I can take a board and train.
Of course, never stops, you guys.
Yeah, when I don't know, I'm not a retrieving guy, but I just know kind of the basics of it. You have to have good recall, obviously, before you can do retrieving. But creating a wider scent cone. So if you have a bumper that's pretty old and stuff, to that dog, maybe the scent cone is this much, right? And then you go onto the gun dog supply or whatever, and you get pheasant or whatever, and you douse that toy with that scent cone becomes very broad, right? So then you're giving that dog higher level of success, so that way when I go out and hide the bumper, the dog won't lose the scent and get frustrated. So you just have to create a broader scent cone, and you just do that by getting these different pheasant, and I have quail, and it's just drops you put on the toy.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, I mean, it sets them up for success too.
Yeah.
And it's enticing for them too. They're walking up, whoa, what was that? Type of thing. And
that's awesome to watch. And I used to do it at my ranch, and it was some dogs, it would take them almost like 7 minutes sometimes, because I didn't have a lot of places to hide. You could see in that yard, but I had a couple porches over there in the house. And so I'd start on the ground, and then once they kind of knew where all the hides were, you know, then I'd go, okay, I would start sticking it up on stairs and stuff. So then they would be used to ground scenting. And then they were like, oh, shit, I'm not finding anything. And all of a sudden
I
you
know
watch
it's
their
around
nose,
here, man.
their nose kind of pick up, and they had to go into air scent. So then I go, oh. So then I started switching in and out, in and out. Right. So then I'd ground scent for a couple, and then I'd hide it so they have to go out to air scent. And it's fun just to watch them go, nope, it's over here. Oh, no, no, no. Oh, there it is. Oh, then they grab it. So you don't go out. This is my friend in England taught me this when I was teaching a workshop there, because we put something out in the long grass. We started in the short grass. Now the dog was a little stuck. And I started walking out there, and then when I came back, he goes, and he does retrieving stuff. He hunts. He said, you know, the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to go out and assist the dog, because he goes, you'll break its confidence, which I thought was a really good piece of advice.
Interesting.
Because then they're going to think about it. They're going to start looking back at you, because dogs rely on us. You know, you've seen those things that they've done with wolves, where they put something in a thing and the wolf will figure it out, but the dog can't figure it out. So the dog just goes, can you help me?
When
So
they
if you go out and
self-discover,
keep
man.
helping the dog, it's going to start losing confidence. It's going to start looking towards you.
Damn, dude.
You know, so if it dog can't find it, you can. If it comes back to place, sometimes I'll go get it and I'll send them back out again. If I've seen that their drive has dumped down, you know, the prey drive's kind of lowered because they're getting flat.
Yeah,
then
they're starting
I'll bring it back and we'll start again, and I'll put it in an easier place so that the dog.
So how do you bring it back?
I'll just go back out and retrieve it myself.
Oh, you do, but you have the dog stay there?
I'll put the dog on place and go out and get the toy.
Oh, okay. So you call the dog. You can go and get that toy.
If they're stuck, I'm going to end it, the search, and I'll recall them, put them on place. I'll go out and get the toy, come back, maybe refresh it with some scent, and then.
But you don't want to do it while the dog's out there.
That's what he told
break
me.
The confidence.
Yeah, don't go out there and go this way. Right. That's just typical what we would want to do, but.
Well, it goes to show you that's what we do naturally, and that's why you have to recalibrate the dogs when they come to you. That's just another form of human assistance that dog that kind of screws them up, you know. But it's us being nurturers by nature, and the dog isn't like that, man. Like, Brian Bailey, is that his name? He wrote the Remember in the Wild and Your Dog. Where is that? Yeah, Brian Bailey. But he talks about, and I'm going to have him on one of these live streams here pretty soon. But he talks about in that book, he's Green Beret. So we have an Army Ranger, and then we got a Green Beret coming on. But he was up in Alaska, and he had this mentor that kind of taught him how to read the world and like look at these tracks, these wolf tracks, and he's like, how many are there? And then he kind of goes through how he goes and deducts how many wolves are here. But there's that huge just knowing that we have the wolves are wild, and the dogs have a little bit of this in them still, and we need to address that, and knowing that they're not necessarily, there is a pack drive, but he states that once the wolf kind of gets older, they make themselves a pariah. Like, he came across this old female wolf that was dying, and it was just so profound to him that the pack just let him die. And that is the wild, and that is the truth about you know. And it's kind of harsh for us to hear, but it just, my point is that they're not being like, oh, come over, let me help you out or anything. Sometimes it's her recognizing that she doesn't put in or contribute to this pack, and also becoming a weak link. So she decided to take herself out. I thought that was interesting. I'll talk to Brian Bailey about that. But have you ever worked with German pinschers? And then I love what Brian was saying, or excuse me, Jonathan, about love. Those happy surprise moments when the dogs in scent work and when they self-discover. And I mean, I've seen dogs run, man, and their nose, bing, and their body is like flips them over. Like they're running so fast, like on this trail, and then it's usually along. This happened along a hedge, and then somebody cut into the hedge, and the dog ran, and his nose went to where they cut in, but his body was still flying down the, and he tumbled, got up, and then went into and I'm just like, man, that is so cool.
Well, that's the thing, just to kind of back up to that. So when you have a dog that's very much into retrieving, what we don't want to do is overdrive the prey drive by rapidly throwing the ball over and over and over again. Right. So when you have these dogs that can adrenalize quickly, what's good to do is do maybe 1 or 2 retrieves and then switch to a find. Because when you send the dog on a retrieve, and especially if it's in motion, that prey drive, that adrenaline's firing like 0 to 100. And then they come back to place, and then you bring them back down, right?
Right.
But if you send them out on a find, they may blow off the place hot, but they got to slow down. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to track. So it's the same fulfillment, but the finding is more cerebral, right? It's engaging the nose more than it is the eye, because the eye is following the movement of the toy or whatever you're throwing. So it's all prey drive, but it's just, you're just kind of downshifting. So they can blow out to refine it, but if they don't slow down, they're going to keep losing the scent.
It brings their awareness.
Right. So it's good to mix the two.
Right.
And over adrenalize the dog maybe on a couple of retrieves, and then bring him down, and then put him on a find and slow his brain down.
Absolutely. And then that's the great stuff about scent cones. Have either of you worked with German pinchers? I worked with Doberman pinchers.
Long time ago.
But not German. I don't know German pinscher if I did, it was in a class with a bunch of dogs. And but Dobies, I've worked with Dobies, plenty of those. And Min pins, I've worked with those. People don't realize that the Min pin was around about 100 years before the Doberman. And Min pin is what Dotson and a Whippet.
Oh, wow.
They made a Min pin. So yeah, the more you know. And then how do people if they do want to shadow with you, Brian? Is it just brianagnew.com or what? I saw that there was some trader or some Brian Agnew.
The balancedogca.com is the website.
Balanced Dog CA. Here, let me see if I can pull it up here.
Bill, I got to run to the front door. Hang on a second. Okay.
So while he does that, let me see if I can do this. I gotta love all these little surprises. So I'm going to share his website here. And let me see. Oh, good. Hi, Gina. Gina's listening. I'm all reading your message that you just sent me, Gina, here. But I'm going to put up Brian's The Balanced Dog. I was reading that message about Poppy earlier, too. So .ca looks like there. Oh, can't be. I don't know. Here, let me see if Brian's back. Nope.
You find it?
I did not. What is it here?
I don't know.
Let me see.
The Balanced Dog CA.
Progenitor. What's progenitor? Oh, wait, let me see. Oh, here, let me. German Pinscher is a progenitor heir of both Min Pin. Oh, and Doberman. Okay. Progenitor. Okay, great. Really awesome scent work dog, that Pinscher is. Great. I love watching those dogs, man. And sometimes there are outliers as far as individual dogs, watching them work and do their thing. And we did a whole scent work course in NAPOPO as well, where they start using the boxes and box feeding, and then they start to transition that to teach scent work and teach ground disturbancy, and then started to go after an article that the dog needs to find.
Right. Did that come through, Bill?
Where? Let me see. Did you text it or did you?
Private chat.
Oh, yeah. Let me see. I got a little special feature back here, private chat. Okay. Oh, there it is. .com. Balancedog.ca.com. I put the balancedog.ca for some reason. So that's it. I'll put it in the comments as well. Here, my mouse isn't working. But here, I'll be able to pull it up right now. Paste.com. Here we go, man. There you are. So got
one other thing. I'll send you. This is
Gina's watching. She's just said. Gina was one of your shadows.
Oh yeah, and then I just sent you another link for the leashes and the long lines too.
So okay, let's talk about that real quick. Do you have any on around you real quick that you can show us?
Yeah, these
are.
are.
We're gonna go through your. This is your site, you guys, and I'll post up in the comments down below too.
So right now, oh shoot, I just packed them up. Bummer. But I'll send you a picture.
Okay.
But here,
I want to talk about them.
These are the slip leashes. These are my slip leashes and long lines. So this is just the 5/16 eighth rope, 5/16 rope. But the thing is like, there's only a few ways you can terminate the rope. And I wanted something that was very streamlined. So there's this knot that he uses for the hand loop and then on the head loop as well. But normally you're going to see a metal swedge here covered with like plastic, like heat shrink, or they'll stitch it together. Mendota uses something like they'll put some faux leather and then stitch it. So, but the long lines are built the same way. And what I ended up doing now as well is somebody was asking me about snap leads, like clip leashes, but she wanted a backup because she uses prongs a lot. So I just had some made where we actually added where the bolt snap goes. So like if this was the leash and the bolt snap goes in here, right? And then the knot gets tied. So now you have a bolt snap here. What we did is we added an extra ring here. And then we put a 9-inch backup tether, and it's all black nickel hardware. And that's just going to be a custom order sort of thing for now. We're building a form that will be online that you can go in there and do these custom orders. But I'll
cool. That's the dynamiclead.com. I got it scrolling on the bottom of the screen right now.
Yeah, so that's the leashes, and then I'll send you a photo here of just with those snap leads.
Oh, cool! Look at, I got a little here. Let's see how can I do this. So I just got somebody sent me a model of your leash being worn on their dog. So let me see if I can share screen, window, messenger. I don't know, man. We're gonna see. Oh crap, I can't do it because I need to go to some system preference here. So share. Can you post that, Gina? Can you post that on your Facebook page?
Is Gina watching?
Yeah, Gina's the one who just posted it on her. If you post that up on your Facebook page, Gina, then I can go to your Facebook page and show everybody. But here she's actually doing a doggone Seattle. So we had Gina, and we had doggone Seattle on here as well. And let me see if she posted that. Hold on, because it's actually a cool. She's like, I post up a model for his dog. Let me know when you do that, Gina, and then I'll be able to share that.
I just texted you some photos of the other leashes, the snap leashes.
Okay. Text. Okay, cool.
Send them to your phone.
All right. So how can I? These are cool, man.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, it was like pulling teeth to get him to modify that leash for me. he didn't want to part me the 3/8 snap bolt because I could have had somebody else make the tethers, and he finally goes, "I'll do it." But you can't find that color hardware. He has it made for him.
Okay.
Because I was trying to find somebody that had that matching hardware. So it's nice that the hardware is all matching. And it's very same rope as the slip leashes, so it's very nice in the hand. It's what we call a kern mantle rope. So I don't have a piece here, but it's got an inner core, a woven inner core, and then an outer sheath. So and it's got a little give to it. So like the long lines have a little absorption of energy when a dog hits the end of it. So that's why it's called the dynamic lead. So it has a little bit of dynamics to it.
It does have the absorption. Okay, let me see here.
Like climbing ropes, there's two kinds of climbing ropes. There's a static line. You don't want to fall on a static line. You want to fall on a dynamic line, right? Because the dynamic line absorbs the energy when you fall.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure this out, dude. I'm such a horrible with the technology. I'm just trying to show you guys the picture of these. Let me see what else here.
Gina. On the site. They can go to the site and just sign up for the emails because.
Oh, I'll just go to the site, dude. What the heck?
I don't have them on the site yet.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No. I said they will be eventually. But again, they're going to be a custom order. We're minimum of 12, but you can also you can do a custom order of slip leashes too. That's the form we're still trying to build. But you can mix and match slip leashes, clip leashes. You can pick out of 19 colors.
Okay, cool. So let me go to the double dog down.
So that's another option versus what you can buy online that's in stock. I just wanted to give people more options.
Okay, cool. We got it, man. Gina to the rescue. All right, we got to plug Gina's page too. Double Down Dog Training. You guys go follow her. She needs more followers. But here we are. So here's one of your.
Yeah.
At least it looks like a healthy.
It looks like it's a figure 8. So, what's funny is that nobody. I look back on things now. We weren't using this in the States. This thing. I mean, I didn't see it. I saw one guy walking one day with a Catahoula, and he had this slip leash and loop on its nose. And I was kind of like, oh, that's cool. And then I just carried on my day. But when I went to England, it's very popular over there. They just refer to it as the figure 8. And so all you're doing is you're taking a loop of the leash, you stick it over the dog's head, and then you twist it. So it's like a figure 8 now. And then this end goes over the muzzle, and then you slide the leather stopper. The thing is that if that dog panics and pops it off, that's why we have backups for them. So that if it ever popped that loop off, it can't escape the leash.
Because then you'd have a.
There. So, but this wasn't. So we went to England to teach, and we went and worked and did a pack walk, and we were working with all these dogs, and a lot of people was using the figure 8. So when we came back, this is years ago, and I had Sherry do a video showing this. Hey, we learned this from our friend Paul in England, and then it started that when we came out with the dynamic leashes and stuff, it started to catch on. So you see a lot of people using it. So it's a great tool. And then like my dogs, I used it for them for a while, and then I moved them just out of it into a slip lead. But what it does is it by putting that pressure on the muzzle, it's putting the dog in defense drive, like a mother will muzzle a puppy, right? And
yes.
so she's put pressure there, and the dog relaxes, and they release it. So this is why you put a dog in defense. In defense drive, you have 3 behaviors: fight, flight, and fight.
Or freeze. Or fight, yeah.
Right? Flight, fight, and freeze.
Right.
So when that loop goes on, some dogs will become this way. That's more of a freeze. Some dogs will go into a fight to try and get the pressure off. So it's just different ways to acclimate them to it, But that's another great little thing to have at the ready.
Yeah, I have. I mean, sometimes I even try to shake it off or whatever, but you just keep it up, and a lot of times, like Gary Wilkes said something to me about those Halties and about the mount. He's like, especially with dogs, when they try to bite or nip at something, like when you have control of that muzzle, right, and being able to direct that right away,
Yeah.
right? And I was just like, hey man, that's a great point. You know, not only that,
Yes.
but you're pinpointing exactly right where that tool is too.
Yeah.
And it's good.
The thing with the Halti, like this figure 8, it still works. The pressure is still mainly up at the neck.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
There
So
is
it's a
like
little
when you
different.
pull up, you'll see the rope kind of tighten around the muzzle a little bit.
I see. Okay.
With that figure 8, just like if you put a Halti on the dog, you have to teach the dog what neutral pressure is. As the dog sits there with the loop on and they go, what the hell is this? Just like putting a thunder shirt on the dog, dogs freak out because they don't know where this pressure is coming from. And so what I do is I put the figure 8 on the dog and then I'll pull up and release it. Pull up a little more, release it. Pull up
Okay.
more pressure, release it. So I'm trying to show the dog, look, as you sit here, it's neutral. When we move, there's pressure. When you're with me, there's no pressure. So you teach them neutral pressure. Halties are more active because first they clip here, and they're great for dogs that maybe are redirecting, because when you do turn them, it actually cinches around the muzzle, and then when they comply or come back towards you, then the pressure releases.
Okay.
Right, so it's a more active tool. So like if a dog comes at me, I just pull up and hold pressure. I'm having a conversation. Right, when that dog calms down, I start releasing the pressure. If the dog blows up, I put the pressure back on. And so you're just having this like nice, quiet convert, pressure and release. I'll let go. You're acquiescing, then I'll give way. Right, and so the figure 8 is not as clear of a line of communication as like something like the Halti, because it is really, depending on how hard, or how not hard, but how much pressure you put on the leash, is going to be the same that's happening on the muzzle. Gentle
Wow.
leaders don't work the same.
Those the gentle leaders are the harness.
It's a head halter. But usually pulls up under the eyes. It doesn't really do a lot of muzzle pressure like a
We
Halti
have a
does.
gentle something here that's a harness.
Well, Gentle Leader makes a harness, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it makes a harness.
And what about harnesses?
Great. Like Juno wore a harness, but he was in front of a sled. My husband.
That's right. Like for polling, for stuff that is actually
right away. Never been on a sled team, and he took to it. But we were watching a dog in the dog park the other day. It's not really a dog park, but it's an off-leash open space. I was with my trainer friend, and a dog went by in a harness, and she goes, "Do you notice how that dog's walking?" It's like, yeah, he's walking very stiff, right? So there's a lot of restrictions.
We want this,
Yeah,
not this.
have over time orthopedic issues with some of those harnesses because they're pushing the elbows kind of in.
Yeah, the gait is getting changed, and not only that, but the Good Dog did a big article on that, on how it's changing the gait of these dogs and some problems that they're seeing. I mean, just know that they have to compensate elsewhere, right? And so we'll see other things like back problems, or but if you want your dog not to pull, I mean, they have the no pull harnesses. I don't think that's I think it's kind of a marketing gimmick. There's a lot of dogs. What's up,
Denise? Say Halti, stop pulling. Well, dogs will pull in the Halti too.
Well, dogs, I mean, the key is
dogs will pull in prong collars. They'll learn to shut that pressure off.
So. You better believe it. And the thing is that my end goal is that this leash and collar are decoration, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, but that's up to the client. I think Gina and I had that conversation.
Really?
You'll remember that, where she called me and she was really like, "Oh, I was listening to these trainers and they're talking about you're not a good trainer." So I can't, Gina, refresh your memory. But it was all about, like, if you're not sending that dog home naked, meaning that dog shouldn't go home on anything.
Right. And I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that by any means.
Well, that's like, come on.
I mean, someday in the future, maybe we'll have, solid.
That's up to the owner. That's up to the owner.
Totally.
That's how much
That's
time
their dog.
All we're doing in a board and train is decompressing, building the dog back up, and building these commands that mean, in what I do, these commands mean a physical action in the dog, and more importantly, an emotional response of calm, relaxed, right?
Love it.
So, the dog knows what the dog knows when they go home. It doesn't know it very well with the owners. They have to put in the reps. They have to put in the time, to take that dog, just like we did through the board and trains. Like, we take them all around. Once we have a foundation, we start getting them out there. But that doesn't, like, the thing with Gary, Wilkes is you all know he's really good with the bonks.
Yes.
The problem with that, and I'm not opposed to it, but I like to build my relationship with the dog first. I like to teach the dog where the dog's going to be safe before I add like a punisher like that.
I agree, dude.
And when I do something like that, whether it's a physical one or compressed air, because what you're doing in that, what you're achieving when you're using something like that is you're trying to send the dog into a flight behavior. Flight is easier to fix than fight. And a lot of these dogs that are in fight behavior, reactivity, and things like that, they have learned that has worked for them.
Absolutely.
They have learned that if I move forward, that will move. And so what you have to do instead of, so you build recall, you build place, you build a heel, you build all these things that, that's your components. But then you say, okay, well, this dog's going to I need to knock him out of this, and I need to send him into flight. You'll see me when I'm working the long line, sometimes I'll crack it across my leg and the dog will get startled. We did that with one of Gina's dogs, and
interesting.
And it totally, like, Gina was just like looking at me like, I've never seen that from my dog. I said, we had to wait for the right moment because the dog was very high in prey drive. And so I was just long lining her. I watched her for probably 10 minutes before I put her in line, started working with her. And then as she passed by me, she was moving away. I took the long line and cracked it across my leg. So it makes this big pop. Right. And then the dog went into flight, and I let her have the whole line. And she went into flight, and then I worked her back towards me. So she didn't see it coming from me. It was just a sound that happened as she passed by, and that sends them into flight. Now you have their attention. So I did that to bring her out of prey drive, and I could tell she was a sensitive dog, but I had to wait for a moment where her adrenaline wasn't so high, like forward moving adrenaline. And so when I cracked it, her brain went, oh shit, and she bolted. And I didn't restrain her. I let her have the line, 15 feet. She hit the end of it, and I said, let's go. And we just started moving through the yard, packed her in, and then we carried on. The next day we did some other work with her, and it was huge. But
you cut through.
Bonk a dog like that, you're going through their defense drive. You get a dog out of prey drive, you have to go through their defense. And how does that look? Well, it's either a leash check, a bump on the e-collar, something that interrupts the prey drive, and then you bring them back in the pack drive.
And something that is significant enough to interrupt it.
Well, in some cases, right? So in some extreme cases, you go, this dog needs the hand of God, and that would be more of the punisher. You know? And that's, somebody explained it to me one time, which nature is full of punishers, So if the dog, goes out into your rose bed and all of a sudden there's goat's heads in there and thorns, it's going to avoid that. Those things are the punisher. Like the cat sitting on the wall and it starts to rain, it's going to move. The rain's the punisher at that point.
Yeah.
The dog,
discomfort,
right? They're learning to avoid that punisher. But I like to build my relationship first to say, oh yeah, that sucked, but come over here. It won't happen if you're next to me.
That's right. I mean, that's trust.
Right.
That's trust, and not only that, but that starts a rapport. Well, and we've been going for a little bit, Brian, so we probably could end this here.
Yeah.
But dude, I'm already my mind has already been blown just by that, dude. That little crack of interrupting. But I agree fully with you, dude. We have to establish that relationship. We have to establish that rapport before we start to do this stuff. And a lot of trainers come in hot. And just remember what we said at the very beginning of our conversation. Direction, not correction.
Yeah. Start with that, because everybody wants to correct the behavior. Very common. The owner's like, the other trainer tried to correct this behavior. We can't correct this behavior. Well, let's just start giving the dog some direction right now and see what starts to fall off. See what starts to soften. in
Yeah.
that dog, you know?
Well, and see, because then we can make positive reinforcement real,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
then they're doing something that we can actually be like, dude, I'm proud of you. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that just like punishers come a little bit too quickly, I think that the reinforcement comes a little too quickly.
Yeah.
Where we need to observe that which is and where the direction of the dog is going. I got two goofballs over
Yeah, I
here.
can hear him back there. Well,
Freeze.
the thing is, look, in all positive, when you're using food, you're putting the dog in prey drive. When you're using a toy, you're putting a dog in prey drive, right? Fine. But if you're doing all positive all the time and you're putting on this bag with food in it, the dog sees you. When you come out and you get that dog, you load the dog in prey drive just with your presence. Like when I'm using food, it's rare if I ever clip a bag on. A lot of times I'm away from the dogs and I put it in my pocket. They know when I come out, they smell it.
Oh,
But
they don't. Yeah.
but they don't see me in that light every time. They don't see me like, so that's the problem with all positive. Sometimes you're never moving the dog out of prey drive into pack drive. The dog has this association that when he's with you, there's always food in the equation. So you're basically working the dog in prey drive a lot. He's in pack drive, but I don't like the adrenaline. Like if I'm working dogs and rewarding them with food for healing, and I'm still going to control the level of that prey drive. But if I'm using food, that's what I'm doing. I'm driving what we call driving that drive.
Yeah. The
If a dog's
motivation.
back here lagging and I put the food out in front of me, dog's going to pick up its pace and get to my hand. That's prey drive. So I'm using the food to drive the drive and drive the dog into that position, and then I pay out.
It's like what you're saying, that prey is the taking up that space.
Yeah.
Right. Just like a predator would with
Dog
prey.
from here to here. The dog has high pack drive, and I'm trying to get it up a ladder, and I'm on the side of the ladder, like step stairs at like Home Depot. If I'm on the side, but if I go around the front, now the dog's here, and I'm in front of the dog, and he has high pack drive, and he wants to be with me.
Yeah.
Get him to come upstairs.
And
If
right up
that's
your
not
face.
the case, maybe the dog has high prey drive. So what do? I bring food out, and I lure. Is when we lure dogs, you're driving the prey drive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole thing with drives, is learning when to switch the dog, how to switch the dog out of the one you don't want them in into the one that's favorable.
I've learned prey, social, and defensive. Those are the ones that I've learned.
Yeah, social is as the thing is pack drive, but play is a mixture of all three drives.
I can see that.
Yeah,
Brian. Okay, so we have a question here before we go. Brian, if you're working with a dog that is forward in fight, defensive drive, and keep in mind, Billy, that you can ask this when we go on our Zoom call when we have Brian on the Zoom too. So any questions of my Patreon subscribers, make sure to save them for Brian as well. But this is fantastic, dude, because I mean, just that crack, I'm like, oh, like, but whatever. That's if you are working with a dog that is in forward fight, so if a dog is in forward fight, it wouldn't be defensive. It would be prey, right?
defense drive is really hard. Yeah, Bill, that like dog reactivity loads in prey drive, basically, right?
What is your progression to redirect out of that drive?
But fight, again, defense has fight, flight, and freeze. So a lot of dogs that are in fight, people might say the dog's very high in defense. It's actually the opposite most of the time. That dog is probably more of a flight dog. It probably has a higher flight behavior than it does fight. But like I said, there's factors like stress accumulation will push the dog into a fight behavior. This is self-preservation. You understand, these are instinctual drives for survival. So this is where self-preservation kicks in. The dog's like, oh shit, man, I got to do something, right? So not all dogs will go into a fight behavior. So that's a recall, basically, issue. So if a dog is moving away, if a dog's moving away, they're usually in prey drive, unless they're in flight behavior, right? So if a dog's moving out, they're being pulled out by a visual, they're being pulled out by a sound, they're being pulled out by a scent. So if they hear a dog tag and they load, they're loading in prey drive because that sound is an association. But then what's the behavior when they see the dog? It's reactive and lunging. And then why is that? Well, there's a few root causes for that. But in answer to that question, recall the dog, because what you're doing is you're switching the dog back to pack drive.
So you redirect out of that drive, and then do you utilize the flight drive?
Well, she's asking, would I try and switch the dog into a flight?
Like do a crack of the whip or something like that?
It just depends. If this is a dog that, like the little cattle dog here, when he started to see cars on the pack walks and started eyeballing them, typical, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
so
The
when
big cows.
I see that, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna recall him out of that, and I'm basically switching him out of prey back in the pack drive. Why does he want to go after the car? He's an insecure dog, but he's a herding breed too. He's got a little stranger danger, so he sees people and he starts barking.
Okay.
He right now he's kind of moving into flight on his own. But if you don't address these things with some dogs and they keep going, that fucking person's scaring me, man. That person's scaring me, and he's not getting any feedback from the owner. He's like, I'm gonna go, and they're herding breed. I'm gonna move forward and see what happens. Oh, look at that person moved.
Yeah.
What they'll start to do is not go into flight anymore, because the fight behavior, the moving forward, move that entity. Right?
So they start rushing, start forwarding.
Is a really common example. Dog doesn't know this guy's doing this 6 days a week. He comes up, throws his shit in the door. The dog barks. The guy goes away. So the dog thinks, "Hey,
I've been chasing him away every day.
I'm winning this." Right? He has like a dog that barks when dogs go by the house.
They walk away. Ha ha! I got that.
And
I
he
got
goes
him.
outside in the real world. He does the same thing when he passes by a dog. It's worked for him. So initially, what you want to do is show them the other side, where, look, come in the pack drive, come back to me, safety's here, right? And then you can kind of build in whatever the rest of that might look like.
Well, and you could also do, the antithesis of what that dog. So if the dog thinks that dog's going to chase the dog away by his bark, then guess what, dude? This dog ain't budging.
But I think to finish that answer, I would do the recall, and then I might say, okay, I'm going to do something like that, compressed air or whatever, because the dog maybe is not connecting to me in that scenario. Then I might have to bring something in that then sends the dog into flight, and then I'll say, okay, let me work you back over here again. So you're bringing it out of that one fight behavior and pushing it into a flight. But I would do more recall work first to build the pack drive.
And to start to build a rapport too.
Yeah.
And the thing is that what I hear you saying is that the dog is communicating, but the handler isn't listening. And so the dog starts to up the ante on the communication that they don't like this threat. And so if we could pay attention to, the first communications of oof, oof, and then recall back. So the dog's like knows, hey, look, dude, I listened to you, or whatever. It's not like literally, I'm not listening to you because I'm not saying, and it's not going to be a reward of what you just did. But in a way, based on my actions, I'm going to diffuse that pressure by giving some guidance and some direction, and then maybe even little pressure towards me.
And then you can like with him now, he knows to leave it. So when he does like some of the woofs on the walks, if we're pack walking, now I can go, hey, leave it, But when I'm teaching leave it's to dogs, a lot of times I'm putting line pressure on them. I'm directing them away from what they're barking at. So I'm actually tapping their collar and going, leave it, and I'm guiding them back to me. So a lot of times when I tell a dog when they're away from me, leave it, they usually kind of collect back to me again.
Beautiful.
Like on the walks, if I tell him leave it, he looks up at me. It switches them in the pack drive, basically.
Yeah. I mean, and it's all pattern, and it's all repetition is the mother of learning.
Yep. Time in the saddle.
Time in the saddle, man. Thank you, Brian.
Well, it was a pleasure. Thanks everyone for coming on and the questions. And
yeah, and then if you guys, so in the comments we have the balanceddog.ca.com, and then we also have the dynamic lead in all the comments there. And hold on one second here, Brian. I'll say to you goodbye to you in the studio.
Yeah, then the workshops July and September, you can find those on the Balanced Dog.
In July, and then when in September?
Colorado, Lafayette, Colorado in July, and then up in Park City in September, Utah.
Oh, there you go. Cool. Well, I might be there myself. And I got a dog that's telling me to take her out. Can you hear her over here? So, bye everybody. And then hold on one second, Brian.
Right.
Talk to you soon. And